Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Development Committee. I will now read out the emergency evacuation announcement. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm goes off, please leave the building in an orderly fashion through the nearest fire exit. Please use either the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the fire exit in the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is the island in front of the main entrance to the building. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that the meeting will be audio recorded. Please switch off mobile phones or turn them to silent. Please note that toilet and hand washing facilities are in the main foyer area. And I'll make it past. Yeah, so we can start meeting. Members, there is a need to use microphones during the meeting. When I invite you to speak, please wait until there is a microphone in front of you before speaking, as microphones are needed for the hearing loop and for the audio recording. These are all switched on and ready for you to speak, so you do not need to adjust them. Please make sure that the microphone is directly in front of you before speaking. Members, voting will be done on a show of hands in line with the Constitution. I will ask for a show of hands for and then against recommendations. I will also ask for a show of hands for those wishing to abstain from voting. Okay, members. Agenda items 1 and 2. Apologies for absence. Substitutes, please. There isn't.
Apologies from Councillor Knight.
Yeah, we've received one for Councillor Tracy Knight. No substitution? No. Okay. Agenda item 3, non-members attending? No. Agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of September 2022. Are all members in agreement? Agreed. Thank you, members. I can sign them later. Agenda item 4, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Milne?
Just a moment.
Last year I was on the board of trustees of Finchfield when it was planned to alter the car parking arrangements there.
I don't think now you're not chairman. I did ask about yourself and myself, and I don't. We're okay on that.
We're okay. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much. But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay.
Agenda item 6, 22/00673 full. Rayleigh Sports and Social Club, London Road, Rayleigh. Katie Fowler will present the officer's report. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Chairman. That on.
No, sorry.
Yeah, I can hear it.
No, it's not.
It's not on.
No, I couldn't.
I can hear it. Go on.
Hello?
No. She's got a very quiet voice, hasn't she?
Try that one. Hello? No, that one's not on either. Hello? Yeah,
That's better.
there we go.
That's it.
Thank you. So, Rayleigh Sports and Social Club. The application site is located within the SCR1 allocation. It is located on the north of London Road and to the south of the wider residential development of Wolsey Park. And with the aerial photograph that you can see on the screen, this is the policy SCR1 that's being carried out, known as Wolsey Park. And then you have London Road along the south of the site, and the application site is this green parcel here. I'll just scroll down and you can see it's more zoomed in. So you have Rayleigh Sports and Social Club here, and then the buildings subject to the application are just located south of that, and London Road here. The site is also north of the BP garage, which is here, and then the development which is known as land adjacent Grange Villa, which is currently being developed out for residential purposes just here as well. The application seeks to retain the erection of 7 porta cabins and the use of the site for educational purposes. The application is therefore retrospective in nature. The school specialises in providing educational needs for children with social, emotional, and mental health and autism spectrum disorders. If I just go on to the layout.
Excuse me, Katie. I've just been asked if you could actually
Sorry.
speak up. Councillor Orman, are you okay? I'm okay, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Stanley's asked if you could speak up a little bit, please. Thank you.
Sorry, let me get the plan up then. So the school comprises 6 general teaching rooms, 1 office, a medical room, changing facilities, main hall and dining area, which is included within the clubhouse, administration and sports spaces, storage, lockers and maintenance stores. The proposed use of the site would operate from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Thursday and 7 a.m. to 12:30 on Fridays. Outside of these hours, the primary use of the site for outdoor sports and recreation purposes would remain the default use. The school currently has 18 pupils aged 12 to 16 with the ability to educate up to 30 pupils. The school has 25 staff on site and 6 off-site. So this application on the screen, you can see Rayleigh Sports and Social Club at the existing buildings here, and then these are the porta cabins that have been brought onto the site for the use. The applicant has expressed that Corellius Foundation has a focus on health and sport, and the location of the school within Rayleigh Sports and Social Club was sequentially chosen on this basis. It is important for the children to be in a location which has open outdoor corridors so that the school does not feel or appear as a mainstream school. The planning statement submitted with the application discusses at paragraph 6.4 that the open space around the school is distinctly different to mainstream schooling, which benefits the pupils. This has been taken into account during the consideration of the application. If I just move on to the layout plan, which shows the wider site, hopefully you can all see that on the screen, but to the east of the site, you see Rayleigh Sports and Social Club and the school porta cabins, and then you see the wider playing pitches and playing field. The application site is located in policy SCR1, which is allocated for residential development. There is currently no evidence before the LPA which would suggest that RDC, as the landowner, are intending on developing out the site, which is supported by the 28-year lease signed in 2020. In addition, the number of units required by policy SCR1 have been met elsewhere within the allocation site, and the requirement for play space, public open space and sports pitch provision has also been provided elsewhere on the site. Nevertheless, the proposal would not preclude future development of the site for housing as attended by policy SCR1 at a future date. Section 37 of the Town and Country Planning Act states that in dealing with an application for planning permission, the LPA shall have regard to the development plan so far as it is material to the application as well as any other material considerations. It is considered that although the proposal would fall contrary to its allocation within policy SCR1, the development is acceptable, taking into account the other material considerations discussed. The application site is well contained from wider views of the surrounding area. The proposed development would be clustered to the south of the clubhouse, avoiding sprawl over a larger area. The development would be modest in scale and would have a limited impact upon the wider area for these reasons. A 2.4 metre boundary fence has been installed along the perimeter of the school, and ball stop fencing and netting lines are boundary in the playing fields. So the fencing extends up to around where the pond is, and then the rest of the site is met with the ball stop fencing. Dense vegetation along the boundary would be largely maintained, and therefore the development would not be overly visible from the public realm. The development is not considered to have a detrimental impact upon the appearance of the site or the character of the area and would be compliant with policy DM1 in this regard. There are currently no occupied adjoining residential properties. Nevertheless, even once policy SCR1 and land adjacent Grange Villa to the south are built out, their impact to the development would be considered relatively limited. If I just go back to the aerial photograph, so you can see that the SCR1 of Wolsey Park does extend fairly near to the perimeter of Rayleigh Sports and Social Club, and you can see the starting of the carrying out of the land adjacent Grange Villas. Nevertheless, the buildings are located here, and so they would be a sufficient distance from Wolsey Park, and also would not be directly within the sight line of the residential development of land adjacent Grange Villa because of the BP garage in front of that. There would not be an impact. There would not be an unreasonable degree of overlooking that would occur due to the boundary treatments, dense vegetation and separation with any future nearby residential development. Though noise during recreational hours may be apparent to nearby residential properties, given the small number of students on site, it is not considered that noise levels would be unreasonable for the nearby residential context. In addition, no neighbour comments in relation to noise or disturbance from the school have been received, and given the retrospective nature of the application, it is likely that these would have come forward either as objections to the application or to the Environmental Health Department. It is considered that the proposal would not have a significant detrimental impact upon residential amenity, and the proposal would be compliant with Policy DM1. Just going to move to the site layout so you can see the context of the parking. So the APOA parking standard is required education facilities to provide one parking space per 15 students or staff. The school would have the capacity for up to 30 pupils, and therefore by these standards would require 2 parking spaces. All pupils are dropped off or get the bus or school minibus to the site, and only teaching staff drive. It has been clarified within the planning statement that the school and sports club would operate at different times, meaning there would not be an anticipated conflict in the use of this car park. However, it is clear from the information submitted that there are far more staff on site than seen at a mainstream school. The planning statement outlines that there are 25 staff on site. The submitted plan details that there are 25 spaces on site, and therefore the site would be capable of providing sufficient parking for the school staff. A travel plan was also submitted with the application, which sought to encourage staff to look for more suitable means of travel where possible and to reduce the number of single occupancy car journeys. In light of this, Essex County Council as a local highway authority have not objected to the application, and that this also includes the use of the existing access of London Road. Sorry, you can't actually see it on that plan, but if I go to here, or that one, the existing access, which is just along the south boundary down here, that's an existing access that Rayleigh Sports and Social Club use. So on this basis, it is considered that the scheme would not conflict with transport and highway safety. The application site is located adjacent to a woodland area which is subject to TPO. The council's arboricultural officer did raise initial concern to the scheme due to the concern that there was tarmacking of the car parking spaces. However, their agent was able to demonstrate that this tarmac is historic, and the council's officer was content that no further impact assessment was required. There is also a pond on the southern boundary, which is, you can see on this plan here. However, it is not considered that an ecological appraisal would be required, as any harm that would have occurred during construction would have already occurred and would be a matter of separate legislation. Both national and local policies seek to retain playing pitches and outline that development should resist the loss of existing playing pitches. Exception 3 of Sport England's playing fields policy and guidance outlines that Sport England will oppose the loss of playing fields except where the development affects only land incapable of forming playing pitches. It is clear from the submitted plans that no pitch loss would occur as a result of the development, and the school has been sited in an area which is prone to being waterlogged and could not be used as a pitch provision or training area on this basis. If I just show you the existing and proposed plan. So this is the existing plan prior to the school being taken place. So you can see the 2 playing pitches here, and then with the school in place, there are actually now 4 playing pitches. Corellius Education would have use of 1 mini football pitch on site for educational needs. It is understood that the school have improved the maintenance programme of the pitches, as well as having improved the club facilities, and that is recognised by the increase of playing pitches on the site. Taking these factors into account, Sport England have not objected in principle to the development. However, there were concerns raised from ECB and Essex Cricket via Sport England regarding pitch maintenance during the week. Whilst the school finished at 12:30 on a Friday to allow for the pitches to be maintained, a typical cricket square requires at least 20 hours of maintenance a week, and this was therefore insufficient. As a result, a pitch maintenance plan has been prepared by the applicant and agent. The maintenance plan provides the basis for access to the site during school opening hours to maintain the sport pitches. The plan has been prepared in consultation with Fairview Cricket Club and the ECB to establish their requirements. Sport England have reviewed the maintenance plan with the cricket and football governing boards and have advised that no objection is raised to the application, subject to the imposition of the maintenance plan by condition. The application is therefore recommended for approval, Chairman, subject to the conditions set out in the report and the amendment to Condition 2 as outlined within the addendum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie. We have one speaker on this, Mr. Davy Crayling. Crayling, thank you. We've got a seat there for you, please. You have 5 minutes, and then when 4 minutes are up, you've got 1 more minute. Unfortunately, I'll interrupt you and say you've got 1 minute.
Okay, you don't want me to time it, then that's fine.
No, I've got 2 people timing it for you. Thank you. That's on, so you just...
Can everyone hear me?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Is that okay? Okay, perfect. So hello. My name's David Crayling, and just before I start, I'd just like to thank the committee for taking the time to listen to me. So, as I said, my name's David Crayling. I'm the Secretary of Education approved proprietor of Cradis Education Limited, which is an independent special school for children with social, emotional and mental health needs and autism spectrum disorder. And we're a special school catering for the needs of 18 children, 12 to 16-year-olds. They are boys. It's a specific boys' school, and the school seeks to address the demand for education locally and nationally in the future. The school is Department of Education approved. It's Ofsted regulated, and we adhere to all the Education Act in terms of England. The school is funded for its children by local authorities. So local authority children from Essex County Council, Thurrock and Southend, majority are from Essex County Council, and the children that we cater for are children that have no access to education. They have educational healthcare plans, they're in statutory assessment. Most of our children are either in care, foster or in care homes permanently. The nature of the school addresses the needs for its mission. So every young child has an opportunity by law to have a first education. And at the moment, these children are from disenfranchised backgrounds and societies, and family support is not there, so school becomes a safe place for these children. Some of the children that access the school have not attended school for several years. There is no place, not in Essex or nationally, for these children. Our values are grounded on a determination to change an education landscape, and we want to start this first of all in Rochford. The ambition for the school and its objective is to provide education for the hard-to-reach young people, and the curriculum that we adhere to is a national curriculum. It's not national curriculum in mainstream schools. It's designed for that purpose. It's to engage children back into education and give them a consistent approach through their years 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. The provision is already proving to be a success. Nature of the application is retrospective, and we have had a number of children leave the school in year 11 already, and those children have absolutely bucked the trend, and out of the children that have left, they've gone into apprenticeships and full-time education. That's every single child that's left us in year 11 that's had a positive destination, which we're really proud of. The nature of the school buildings was alluded to by Katie. By design, the school doesn't have corridors, it doesn't have stairs. The school is designed based on the needs of the children and how they can feel safe in the community that they are at every day. So it is by design, it looks nothing like a school. Open space is key. The curriculum is a therapy first curriculum followed by a sports-based curriculum, and then we follow that with a formal education. So in the type of provision that we deliver is what we call Montessori learning through play. And Montessori has been key success, and I know the children are an asset to the school as we move forward, really. There's been a number of benefits to the Raleigh Town Sports and Social Club for the provision of the school being there when the site's not open at weekends. The Sports and Social Club are there in some evenings. The school is there from 7 a.m. in the morning to sort of 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, except for on a Friday afternoon where we're unable to have a cohabitation with the Sports and Social Club. We've been able to invest in the facilities, and that's not just the education facilities, but it's the change rooms, it's the Sports and Social
You have
Club.
1 minute to go.
Okay, perfect. And And we're also addressing locally where we are delivering provision for things called Activate in the holidays and extra curriculum, where we're addressing holiday hunger also. So our school staff are doing extra curriculum during outside of school hours. In relation to the consultation from Sport England, they support this application, which we're really pleased with. We're adding value there. And for me, it's about providing facilities and an environment for children. And I suppose I need to conclude that that may just consider that this application is favourable for the things that have been mentioned in the application process. And I'd like to thank Katie for how she's managed the planning application at this point. And I'm sure Katie will be able to respond to any questions. Ideally, I'd love to go into school tomorrow and to confirm to the staff and children that we have a future at Raleigh Town Sports and Social Club for the foreseeable future. And thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Before I ask members, invite members to speak, I've got a non-pecuniary interest that I am an Essex County Councillor. Could I have that noted, please? Thank you very much. We can't actually ask you any questions. Okay. Yeah, you can go back with your friends.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you. We haven't got any visiting board members. We have Councillor Jim Cripps, Councillor Chris Stanley that are the ward members. Who would you like to speak? Yes, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like you to bear with me for a few minutes while I preload my question for the officers. Bit of context. When I started reading the high-level introduction to the proposal, it read a bit like future tense, and I was under the impression initially that cabins had to be erected and so on and so on. When I got to the officer's report, clearly it was in the past tense, so I felt I had to just contact the officers and make sure I'd got it right, which I did, and I'll share with the members. The officers have confirmed that the facilities are already pre-built, and this is in fact a retrospective application. I also was advised that the recommendation, albeit Portakabin style, and I understand the need for a low-level type of environment for its purpose, but the officers have confirmed that they're looking for full planning permission, despite the Portakabin nature of the buildings. In the officers' report 2.3, it also made passing reference to some lease issues that need to be resolved. The planning officer has reiterated that these matters are legal matters, not planning criteria. The officers couldn't answer any further, reference para number 3.9. They couldn't answer this any further than they already have, and that's because the RDC asset management team have not responded on the SER1 policy intentions. This means the officers have had to make an assumption for their conclusion that follows later in the paper. Effectively, they're assuming that the recently renewed lease, which is about 26 years to run, I believe, is the way forward, and that's what will happen. Another point they couldn't take any further was reference para 4.6, where conversely, Rochester District Council Asset Management did make a comment, and it was a note of caution on a lease issue which appears to be left hanging in the air. There's no conclusion to that suggestion that it needs to be checked. That was the inference I took from it. So, overall, my take on this, and I have to say, I think it's a positive thing to be applauded, given the mental health direction we seem to be heading in general these days. It seems to me that the school concept was already approved via the first application, and obviously does provide a very useful service. Although what we're seeing now is a little bit of limitation on access creeping in, which is what's defined in condition number 2. So there's a degree of limit for public access, obviously because of the school. But overall, I applaud what they're doing. However, in the interest of all the parties concerned, what I don't see is a clear definition of roles and responsibilities for two parties sharing long-term a council asset. Which leads me to my question, because if it is 26 years of cohabitation, there's clearly going to be issues that come up. And I think it would benefit all three parties, the owner, the leasee and the third party, if there was a clear mandate there, which I don't know whether there is or there isn't. I don't even know whether the officers know that. So my question to the officers might be unfair. Are we aware that the new lease includes definition for a leasee and a third party sharing, which goes back to a couple of points above on legal matters that are outstanding? Feels to me, given the application has his facilities already, that we should be trying to tidy up these what are in-house issues, most of them, from a legal point of view. And I only say it on the basis that it protects all three parties going forward, because in 26 years things could get difficult, shall we say. We might even be facing more retrospective planning applications and so on. So I think that's my point.
Yeah.
Have the officers any knowledge of the new lease, and does it include both parties?
Thank you, Councillor Cripps. I've just passed a note to Phil, and he's going to answer that part for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Cripps, for raising those issues, because I think they're important to consider. What I would say, though, and I will provide a bit more of a response as to how we might consider them more broadly, but it's quite important that the Development Committee understands the difference in roles that we have as part of the local planning authority making a decision.
Phil, excuse me, speak up a bit, please. Sorry.
As part the
Sorry,
might
Phil.
swallow it. The local planning authority, we need to make a decision on what is in front of us from a development point of view as to whether that's appropriate within the confounds of planning policy and legislation, the rest of it. So I think, Councillor Cripps, you raise important questions around the lease arrangements, but those are not questions that we can consider as part of this development proposal. So what I would suggest is that offline and as part of any other council committee that would be relevant to talk about assets in particular and the way in which facilitation of the school on site, for instance, could be allowed in the longer term as part of the allocation, or alternatives explored, which clearly is something that would need to be considered if this application were to gain approval. That's the route by which we would need to consider those issues. But this evening, members, I think it's important just to note that the lease arrangements and the legal arrangements around whatever has happened and whoever has a lease with who and whatever length of time that is for is not relevant to the decision that we're making about the location of the school buildings and the appropriateness of the school buildings being there. So that's deliberately why, Katie, and the officer's report is vague on that point, because we're saying that I think the key things are the lease is not to be considered as part of this. The allocation of the land in terms of future development is the key thing for us as planning authority to think about, rather than necessarily the lease arrangement. So it is relevant to think about what the long-term allocation for the land might be, and therefore whether this is appropriate within that context. But the report is clear that it is appropriate on the basis that at the moment there is no other proposal for development of the site, and subject to the decision that you make this evening as the local planning authority that we make, that will then potentially need to be considered in the longer term as to what the council may want to do with the site in accordance with that allocation. I hope that that's clear. I've tried to provide a little bit more information than just saying you can't consider the lease arrangements.
Can I speak? Yeah.
Yes, of course you can.
Yeah, I did anticipate that sort of logic coming forward, actually. What I'm interested though, because I do believe these issues I've raised are important for the applicant as well, given he wants, and he's come forward in his proposal, he's made it quite clear that he wants permanence in the future as well. So I think it is in his interest to know what his roles and responsibilities and rights are in that context. And if it's not in the lease or any other document, it should be, in my opinion. So how do we move to a box where that gets addressed if we don't do it in planning?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Cripps. I think in the planning context, what we would be deciding if the committee makes the decision to go with the recommendation for approval is that this development is appropriate, and therefore in planning terms it's appropriate subject to conditions and the standard things that we would be looking to achieve. Any development anywhere has to have planning permission for it to be considered appropriate, but any landowner or leaseholder will need to have legal arrangements as to whether they can remain on site. So I think it's about separating that process here, where the local planning authority is making a decision based on what is appropriate in planning terms, and the council as landowner needs to make a decision as to what is appropriate on its site, as to what it wants to do with the land and who should be on the land and what they should be operating. For instance, in terms of the school's operation, long-term plans, whether that changes in time, things may change, and therefore that's where lease and legal agreements change. But the planning process is separate from that. I hope that helps.
Perhaps we could take this further offline, as Phil was maintained, if that's okay, and then we can move on to other councillors.
Yes. That's fine. I do get Phil's point, but what I don't want to happen is the subjects to evaporate.
No, Phil
And
would make sure
I would like to be involved in that process because I brought the issues up. I'd like to follow it through.
Well, as you're a ward councillor with, is it Councillor Newport and Councillor Stanley, I am sure, well, I know you will be invited to any meeting that is going to be held.
Okay.
Okay, I won't be involved, but I don't need to be, but the ward councillors certainly do. Okay.
Okay,
For
thank
any
you.
meeting that's to be taken offline. Is that okay,
Thank you.
Phil? Thank you. I've got Chris Stanley, Adrian Eves, Ian Foster. Okay, and you're the next ward councillor.
Thank you, Chairman.
And you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. As we all know, this parcel of land was given by the Gunn family to help with the activities of our young people in the area to the council back in those days. From what I can understand is that it is now no longer available to our young people. Perhaps the officers could identify how our young people are going to use this parcel of land in recreation purposes. It was, as I say, the Gunn family, when they released this land to the council, it was for everyone's use, especially youngsters. And it seems to me at this moment in time, it's now non-existent to our young people. Is this true?
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Katie, would you like to come back, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So, in terms of its availability, so the school is operating in hours where the site was not being used. So it's actually providing a function that when prior to its presence on the site was absent of any activity. So it isn't changing the use outside of the school and how people used Rayleigh Sports and Social Club. That in itself isn't changing, and that's why they've done the management plan, so that it does allow for those uses to continue in association with the school on the site. My understanding is that prior to the school being on the site, there wasn't this kind of open space park thing that meant that anybody could go and use the site whenever anyway, because there are gates which would be shut and locked and things like that. And the site is very secure in that way. So it was only being used perhaps in the evenings, but primarily at the weekend when there were games and things like that. So the school has actually provided a use kind of during the week, and that's why the hours are slightly different on the Friday as well, so that the Rayleigh Sports and Social Club can continue to function within the afternoon. So the school have adapted around Rayleigh Sports and Social Club to ensure they can continue on site and just basically filling hours that hadn't got any use prior to their being on the site.
Does this mean that the Rayleigh Town and Sports and Social Club is now non-existent for players to play football at weekends, or is it still available?
No, it is still available.
Oh,
So
right, okay.
yeah, that's why. So that's
Yeah,
part of the management plan, was so that they could maintain the pitches in the week, so that at the weekends the pitches could definitely be used by players.
And my other question I want to ask is that, is it considered that there is enough parking spaces for that? I mean, you've got three pitches there which will hold something like 200 people, including players, parents and what have you, or to look after that many on the site? Or is it only one pitch at a time will be used?
So that's not part and parcel of this application. So this application, we can only consider the parking spaces in relation to the school. The parking use as Rayleigh Sports and Social Club would have been considered at a time when they had either gained planning permission. I know a few years ago there was permission for the car parking spaces on the site, so I take it that they would have considered that at that time. But in this application, we can only consider it in relation to the school, and there would be sufficient parking for the school.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eaves, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I suggest that what I was going to say would be more relevant? Could I suggest that what I was going to say would be more relevant after the vote? As I discussed with you earlier, it's just something I want to highlight, which is on this issue. Would that be?
Will that be acceptable?
Okay. It's
Just going to ask if that's once we've done the vote, that's it. So I'm just.
It's not on the application, but it is relevant to this particular enterprise, let's say.
I just want clarification from you, Councillor Reeves, is that, I mean, if it's a matter that's not part of the decision-making process tonight, then we can take it offline?
I have taken it offline with you. I just want to, it's nothing other than bringing information to the committee for future. So it's just, this particular application is relevant to, I don't know if you remember, I spoke to you about special schools allocation some little while ago with regards to S106 agreements.
Yes.
And it's that.
Right, okay, so it's got
just
no...
bringing it to people's notice.
Yeah, so nothing that you're going to say needs to have any bearing on the relevance of the decision being made tonight.
No, and I don't want to influence either.
Okay.
So can that be? Can Councillor Reeves?
It would just be a statement.
Right, so he can do a statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
My stuff's,
Oh, that's it. You're on now.
some of my stuff's been picked up already, but I've still got some questions. First of all, in the paragraph 2.3, page 6.3, the application is described as retrospective. Is it only covering what's already in place, or is there anything additional included in it? Shall I ask all my questions before we get to the answers, or?
I'm happy with that, yeah.
Yep, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Drain has alluded to the lease not being relevant to the discussion, but informationally, I'd be interested to know, is the lease between Rayleigh Sports and Social Club and the school, or is it between Rochester District Council and the school?
No, he can ask it. He can, no, he can ask it, yeah.
Just asking for
Yeah, it's just
information.
information, he can ask.
And also, how long is the lease as a matter of interest with the school? I'd just like to go on briefly. In paragraph 3.11, page 6.4, it states it's considered that although the proposal would fall contrary to policy SER1, due to reasons as outlined above, the development is considered acceptable in principle. It then goes on to say in paragraph 3.9, it says it would not preclude future development of the site for housing as attended, I think it meant intended, by policy SER1 at a future date. So my question around that is, has the asset management, and Councillor Cripps touched upon it, has the asset management team or the planning policy team given any indication of a likelihood of SER1 being needed for future housing development? And my final question is, if approval were granted this evening, could it be granted as a temporary consent for a fixed period of time?
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Katie or Yvonne, would you like to pick up the...
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Sorry, I was just writing my note. So yes, in terms of what's on site, that is what's present and what is proposed. So there's no, at the moment there is no additional porta cabins or additional facilities proposed. It's as according to the plan, and that is what's present. I'll leave Phil to pick up on the lease question. I'll just cover the other questions first. So the asset management team hasn't commented in relation to the SER1 policy. They've only commented in relation to the lease. And planning policy are not in discussion or haven't brought anything to light about the SER1 being brought forward in terms of this site at present. And sorry, in terms of whether it would be needed as well, that was part of why we've considered that although it doesn't fall in complete compliance with policy SE1, it's still acceptable because we are meeting our 5-year housing supply, and the policy SER1 was allocated for a set number of houses, and that has already been met on the site within the parcels. So although when it was allocated, it was expected to have to use policy SR1 as a whole. I'll just pull up SER1 so you can see it on the screen. It was expected that the whole parcel was going to have to be used to fulfill that allocation. However, it has been already met by the phases that have been granted planning permission at present. And in terms of the temporary permission, did you want to cover that?
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Foster. We'll dance around some of these questions between officers, if you don't mind. But I'd just add to what Katie's just said. It's absolutely correct. But of course, what we must remember that the allocations within the local plan, SCR1 and other sites, there's a minimum housing target that's kind of trying to be achieved. So whilst that's true from a 5-year housing supply point of view, the site still, and in terms of the level of development that's proposed on the site still could come forward in some form in the future. And so I think that that's why that there's an ability to think about this as we go forward, and any potential future applications come forward to essentially develop out that allocation in the longer term. On the lease point, again, I'm sure that there are those in the room who could answer that question, but I don't know for sure completely who the lease is with. I believe it's sublet with the sports club, but the point is that it's not really relevant to the decision that we're making. So we could find out that information and have that discussion, and I think that discussion should be had from an assets point of view and what the council wants to do with the site in the longer term. As for who it's with and the actual legalities of it and the detail and the length, I don't know the full answers, so it would be wrong for me to assume and give you information that might be incorrect. We'll come on to your question about temporary permission. I'll let you do that one.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Foster. So, as the report sets out, as Katie's written in her report, I mean, the actual proposal is considered acceptable. However, if members were mindful of the allocation for residential development, and on that basis were more comfortable with granting a temporary consent, that is possible. But what you have to bear in mind, and what the committee will have to bear in mind, is what length of time that temporary consent would be for, because we have to be reasonable, because what we're saying is that the development is acceptable, and you can't give a temporary consent to an applicant that immediately puts them in a position where they've got to either start thinking about the expense of reapplying to extend that consent, or they've got to start seeking alternative locations. So it is possible, but there needs to be some consideration that that length of temporary consent needs to be reasonable.
Okay. Could I come back on that, Chairman, if that's all right?
Yes, and I've got Councillor Effley would like to say something.
Just it's a slight expansion on the same subject, but where it feels like it's going, given the comments you just made, Yvonne, is that the lease almost would override a decision by the council to want to develop it.
Is that just a statement or
Is that a question or a
a
statement?
statement?
Well, I'll make it as a question. Would a lease without some limit put on it override the council's ability to decide to go ahead with development on that land?
Perhaps if I come back on that, I think we'd probably need a legal view as to exactly what the restrictions would be. But perhaps if we think about this a bit more hypothetically, I know we've had this discussion separately with different councillors, but the principle here is that planning permission, an application can be made for any piece of land, any applicant, regardless of whether they own the land, regardless of whether they have the legal ability for a lease or any other arrangement to actually deliver the development. It can, the planning system allows for anyone to apply for anything. And so I think the answer to the question is we could make a decision here as the local planning authority that the development were acceptable in terms of what the recommendation says. But if there is no legal agreement, lease or otherwise, in place for that person, operator, to run a facility in this situation, then it can't exist. So the legal framework whereby a landowner needs to give permission for someone to do something on the land or anywhere else, that would override the planning permission. The planning permission is just saying that it's appropriate in planning terms. You'd still need to have legal frameworks, agreements to actually do the development on site, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Councillor FD.
Thank you, Chairman. Hear me? Thank you.
Yep.
Right, I'm a little bit concerned. Councillor Foster mentioned SER1 and the planning application is based on with the football pitches and everything else that's there. Now, this is a retrospective planning permission, so everything is there at the moment and it works and if great outcomes, applaud them for that. But in the future, if SER1 is built out, won't those pitches and things disappear and make what the school does sort of irrelevant because they won't be able to do what they're doing now to get such great outcomes? So maybe looking at a temporary plan application on this one, I think might be a good idea because it might change in the future. So there's some idea on that.
3 year.
So maybe, I don't know what would be acceptable, 3 years, something like that?
We
Okay.
need to put a motion
I'll put a motion that we grant a temporary planning for 3 years on this application.
I'll second it.
I'll second that.
Oh, yeah, Councillor Stone.
I'll second that.
Right, members, we've got a motion on the table. With a condition of for it for 3 years. Can I have a vote that we will accept this motion, please? And then we'll debate it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6. Against?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, members, that's 6 for. 4 against? Yeah, it was 4 against. Thank you. So we'll, if we, I can't get my words out tonight. Members will debate this if needed. If not, we'll go through the full vote for approval. Anyone? Can you? I can't hear you.
Can't hear a word you're saying.
No, it's not on.
Can you hear me now?
No,
No? Yes?
It's coming
Can you
through.
hear me?
it's coming through. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit closer.
I had a concern with the development in the fact that they've already put the buildings in and then asked for retrospective planning permission. My concern is if the school is successful, and in that case I'm quite happy for it to go ahead on that basis, but I'm concerned that if the school is successful they'll just add more buildings, and I would like to put a condition on it that they do not put any more buildings on without coming back for extra planning permission, and they don't try to do it as a retrospective again.
So we could do
Is
that.
that something you can put on as a condition?
Could we do that through the motion?
It wouldn't really be a reasonable condition because in any respect the school would require planning permission to put more buildings, or there would be mid-development or something, but they would require planning permission, so it wouldn't really be a reasonable condition on the basis that it is already covered by planning legislation. And I appreciate that in this instance it is retrospective, and I appreciate your concern with the potential for that to continue. However, if we have to look at the condition and apply that with the conditions tests, I would be concerned that that wouldn't be met on the basis that it would require planning permission anyway.
But Katie, can I come in there?
Sorry, yeah.
Could we not put the condition on that no other structures go on it until they come in for, if it's required, could they not just, they have to do planning permission for, that we don't get into this situation again, we've got retrospective?
So what we could do is look at a condition surrounding the permitted development. I'm not sure entirely how permitted development would apply for a school in this basis. Obviously, with a mainstream school, that's a bit clearer. However, we could look at removing the permitted development rights for educational purposes, so that would ensure that an application would have to come forward and they wouldn't have those rights.
Right, so, okay.
But the motion was for 3 years and that was carried, yes?
Yes,
Okay.
6-4. Right, I had Councillor Williams, Councillor Reeves. Have I missed anyone off from there? No. Councillor, you need a mic. There, one next to you. Oh, look, they're like buses, 2 at a time.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to get this absolutely correct, that we are now voting for, or we will be voting for a 3-year term. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think that's really unfair for the school. I don't see how they can possibly plan for the future on just having 3 years. Therefore, I wouldn't support this vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Reeves.
We've already discussed this matter at length, and it has been asked umpteen times over what the legal situation is. If the legal situation is clarified, then I think this motion the purpose for this motion will just go away. I think that this is preempting. I agree with what's been said previously. I think this is unfair on the school, and I think that we are preempting what the legal position is by doing this. And I would be against actually putting this condition in place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the allocation, isn't it? It's the allocation, not the least. Councillor Lawman.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Chairman. I agree with everything that's been said about this so-called 3 years. I think it's unfair to put this sort of pressure, if you like, on a school for 3 years. I mean, where's the future in this? I mean, if they've got a progressive training programme, in 3 years' time, where were they going to be? I understood at the beginning, we talked about 26 years, and there we have it. And I just don't understand all this other talk. I understand the reasoning, but we had all this put forward to by the officer. And I'm quite content, personally, to approve the original application.
Yes, but that's not what we've got.
I understand that, but I want you to know my views, and I cannot support the 3-year plan.
Yeah, okay.
Can I come back?
Yes.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back? I think it would be much more sensible under the situation to propose a deferment. I realise that we've got to vote on the motion that's on table first, but I'd like to propose, subject to whatever the vote is, that we defer for clarity on the legal side of things, because that seems to be becoming quite a block.
Right. I've just been notified that Phil wants to speak to clarify something.
I imagine Councillor FD may well come back and say something similar. My understanding from the motion, the reason for the motion is to do with the fact that the site is allocated for housing development. This is nothing to do with the lease arrangements, because as I've already said, the lease arrangements cannot have anything to do with the decision that we're making here tonight, regardless of whether there's a 26-year lease or a 126-year lease or whatever. It's irrelevant to the decision that we're making. So again, my understanding, and Chair, I'm sure you'll be able to confirm, and Vice Chair, is that the motion is on the basis of the allocation and understanding what may come forward in the future with regard to the allocation, not the lease arrangements.
Right. Councillor Epley, would you like to clarify what you said in your motion, please?
Right, okay. I just was going to say this is about the allocation, nothing to do with the lease. I'm worried about the training fields going away, and that's the whole point of that's what the school does well, using the training fields. That's what I'm worried about. But my motion is that we go through a temporary permission for 3 years with the school.
And that was seconded by Councillor Stanley. Members, have a motion on the table for approval with the temporary 3 years allocation. Oh, sorry, Yvonne.
The condition for PD.
Are we
And the condition relating to any future permitted development rights.
Yeah, with the permitted about 3 years. Yeah, definitely. So we've got that. Members, for approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? Oh, sorry. We'll get.
Would you mind clarifying the last vote of
It was
what it was
6-4.
for, please?
We had to do a vote because we had a motion on the table. Once you have a motion on the table, you have to vote that the members will accept that motion. That's what we voted for, that we would then debate, and this is what we're doing. We weren't voting for approval. Any committee, that when we have a motion on the table, you have to vote to say you will agree to debate the motion or disagree. We agreed 6-4, and that's what we've done. And now we're going to the vote to say approval with the condition for permitted developments. That's what we're going through.
Thank you, Chairman.
Is that okay?
Thank you, Chairman.
And that's the best I can clarify it.
No,
The officers, if they need to, they will correct me if needed. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, members. So we're now voting for the motion with the condition. For all members in favour, please. Please have a show of hands. Against? 4 for it and 6 against. So members, we go back to the original approval. So the recommendation is for approval. Members, can I have... Yeah, we've got... lost it. There it is. So we've got approval subject to item on number 2. You hope you've all read it. Thank you.
It would be the same. The recommendation would just be for
Approval, won't it? Yeah. Right. So as long as you've read that, that's fine.
Permitted development rights as well.
Yeah.
Same as what we
It's
said.
exactly the same.
Just need
Yeah.
to confirm that.
So can you confirm the legal offence of the as well?
No, we can't because we just didn't. We can't do that, surely, because it's we've
Yeah,
just
you can
voted
do
against it. Still do it.
It's just about approving it on a permanent basis rather than a temporary.
Oh, right.
Still
Okay.
remove permitted
Right.
development
Okay.
rights.
Right. Members.
Thank you, Chairman. Is there a condition on this recommendation that there cannot be any further development on the site?
Yeah. Yes, there is.
There is, okay. Just for clarification.
Right. So we go back to the original motion to approve this application. Members, for, please put your hands up. Against? Any abstentions? 1. Oh, sorry, sorry, sorry. You've lost weight. I couldn't see you with the mic. Members, that has carried 9 for 2 abstentions. Thank you, members. I've got so many bloody papers here. Councillor Eaves, would you like to make a short statement, please? 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
right.
It'll become apparent why I didn't want to actually make this statement during the debate. We had a planning application come to us some little while ago where in reading it, I found that the S106 agreement monies that were actually recommended for it were for the education side of things were noted as not needed because there was capacity. Unfortunately, there is a situation where special needs schools fall through the gap. S106 agreement monies can only be allocated from proposals that come through council for schools and education within the area that we are actually responsible for. The problem with that is that special needs schools are more often than not within the area that we are actually in charge of. Problem with that is that what we have in Essex, we have a situation at the moment where there is massive overcapacity in special needs schools, and there is a huge need for more places in these special needs schools. I'm bringing this to the notice of members because it's something that came to me and I wasn't aware of. But a lot of special needs schools in Essex are anything up to about 125% oversubscribed. And their finance is limited because it does not get allocated from local funds where the local is actually providing no assistance to these actual schools. So I just wanted to bring that to the notice of the members because it was new to me. And if we get an opportunity to actually support a school like we've been talking about tonight, then I would encourage members to offer their support. That was why I did not want to actually say it within the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves. Members, we'll go on to item 7, the Finchfield Trust, 22/0066044. And again, Katie, it's over to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Finchfields is a small cul-de-sac located off Eastwood Road. I have some aerial photographs on the screen to provide some context within the wider area. So you can see Finchfields just located to the south, and then you have Eastwood Road here, and then King George's Park just further north, and then the main high street just over here. If I scroll down, actually, I think I've got a more zoomed in photo. Here we go. So the application site is located at the end of Finchfields and is fronted by numbers 7 to 12. So as from the aerial photograph, again, you can see this is the application site here, and you have Finchfields Road here with the bungalows fronting it. The Finchfield residents qualify to live in these properties either due to infirmities or by virtue of being 65 years of age or above, and they are managed by the Finchfield Trust and Rochester District Council. The application site is characterised as a soft landscaped amenity area, and each dwelling benefits from a soft landscaped frontage. And this can be seen again from this aerial photograph, where you can see very much green spaces to the front of each dwelling, as well as the amenity area subject to the application. However, it is clear from historic aerial photographs of the site that it has been used informally for parking due to Finchfields being able to accommodate parking elsewhere. So this photograph on the screen now is from 2017, and you can see, although let me zoom in a bit actually. Hopefully you can now see that there is a car parked informally on the verge here, and then also a van parked on the application site. If I just go to my site photos, there is a sign currently on the grass informing residents to not park there due to the ongoing issue of this. And the road itself, I'll just scroll down again, it's you can kind of see in this photograph, it's too narrow for a car to be parked on the road and a car to really pass by as well. So that's led to some highway safety issues. Planning permission is now sought for the change of use of the soft landscaped amenity area to create 5 parking spaces. The parking spaces would allow for Finchfields residents visitors to park short-term clear of the highway. The scheme has included a landscaping provision around the perimeter of the parking spaces and would utilise an existing drop curb which would be made good. The parking spaces would be finished with Marshall's grass guard permeable block paving and planting as proposed around the parking area. So this photograph up here just demonstrates what the grass guard would be. So it's kind of this block paving that allows for the grass to grow through, so you still have the appearance of a grassed area, but without it kind of facing the wear and tear of, without the block paving as well. And then around the outskirts of the parking spaces, you see this planting, and that varies in species, and that's specified both within the report and on the plan. The preamble for SBD2 discusses that grass verges and open amenity areas were usually intended to be an integral part of estate design and layout. Looking at the layout of Finchfields, it is assumed that the amenity area was designed to soften the erection of the bungalows. Whilst local policy seeks to avoid the loss of open amenity areas, there is particular resistance to the enclosure of land into private gardens, whereas the proposed development would not enclose the site and would maintain it as open space. The planting and materials proposed would take on an appearance that would be sympathetic with the soft landscaped character of Finchfields. As the garden areas of the dwellings along Finchfields for the most part are in excess of the requirement outlined in SBD2, it is considered that the amenity space was not intended to form additional gardens, but rather for the visual aesthetics of the estate. It is considered that the development has been designed in a manner which would be sympathetic to the character of the area, and the development would comply with the objectives of national and local policy and guidance. The proposed development would introduce car parking where it is currently absent. Although there would be a degree of noise resulting from the development, the highway extends up to the existing amenity area and is in close enough proximity to result in some levels of noise. In addition, the parking area would be for use by visitors, and cars would not continuously be using this area throughout the day and night. No neighbour objections have been received, and it is considered unlikely that the level of noise that would result would be unreasonable. As such, the proposal is considered compliant with Policy DM1. The proposed development would introduce 5 visitor parking spaces. I'll just zoom in so you can see those demarcated a little clearer. The parking spaces would meet the minimum dimensions stipulated by the APOA parking standards, and they've also included the 6-metre line behind the parking spaces to demonstrate that they would be able to reverse out easily from the spaces to exit the site forward. Finchfields is a narrow road which would not have a great enough width to accommodate traffic passing by parked cars. There is also a restriction from parking on the road Monday to Saturday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Therefore, visitors have to park in nearby pay and display car parks. As the development would introduce visitor parking where there is currently no formal parking, the development would be an improvement from the current parking provision on site. The existing dropped curb would be suitably altered to become a vehicular access. Essex County Council, as the local highway authority, have been consulted in the application and have raised no objection. At present, 4 residents have cars and either use the nearby public car parks or have other private arrangements off-street. The applicant has expressed that the residents are clear that the parking would be primarily for visitors and residents would be restricted to park in the bays for a limited time period only. The applicant has advised that signage would be erected to instruct on this. It is considered that the proposal would improve the highway safety of Finchfields and would therefore be acceptable in regards to the MPPF and Policy DM30. The application is recommended for approval, Chairman, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one ward member here, Councillor Jack Lawman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll state from the outset that I do agree with the need for parking in this area. I do have concerns, though, that because I'm familiar with some of the people that live around that area, is that we talk about visitors, and I know that they would like, obviously, disabled bay and so on, and one of the big issues there for their age and illnesses, etc., is care workers who have nowhere to come when they come and visit patients, etc. And it also leads down, as I understand, to Britain's Court, and we have a little bit of a conflict sometimes with parking over there. So my question, if I may, although I'm in favour of this particular application, my question is, if I may, is how we're going to maintain control of that parking area. And so if we get some brave, ignorant person who wants to leave their vehicles there and move it out of Castle Road car park, what are we going to do about these people? I mean, I know you've said that it's only going to be for visitors, temporary parking, but there's always going to be someone who's going to test the water. So what I want to know is, what will we do about that?
Thank you. So it is largely kind of outside of the application. That is covered by separate legislation. I did speak to our asset management team about this because I knew that there would be concerns They did discuss that there would be the signage, and I believe it would be the council enforcing that. But it is largely outside of the consideration of planning, and that would be covered by elsewhere.
Yes, councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's only that I mentioned that because technically it comes under a trust, doesn't it? The Finchfield is a trust, although, albeit the council is part of that trust. But so, is there a way we can go back to the trust for the trust to somehow enforce this or something? I'm not on the legal side. I don't know. So,
I don't. Well, we would really need a legal opinion on that anyway. But my understanding would be that it wouldn't be for the trust to enforce that. They're kind of the management of the bungalows and the residents in it. But it would be down to the council to enforce any parking regulation in that area.
You deserve it, Councillor Norman, you deserve it. Before I bring in Councillor Stanley, I just would like to ask one question. This isn't planning. I did mention it to you the other day regarding the work that's going to be done for the parking. Could we ask the applicant to actually send letters to the bungalows so they are aware, and if they're not really aware, their families will be aware of what's actually going on? And I know this isn't a planning, it's just a consideration to the residents who live there.
The asset team did inform me that they will be sending letters.
Oh, thank you very much. Right, sorry to butt in there. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Whilst I agree that there is a parking problem around there, could I have a couple of conditions put on that area? One is that a barrier, a metal barrier, railing of some sorts, would be advisable for that area, as if somebody puts their foot on the accelerator instead of the brake, and we already know that the area has got some elderly people in, and any parking there, if they put their foot on the accelerator, they'll go straight into the bungalows adjacent to that parking area. So
Be careful, it's not only elderly people that do that,
yeah,
Councillor
I'm not
Stanley.
saying
Can you just modify that to say visitors?
Visitors.
Thank you.
Sorry, visitors that may be parking in that area may put on the wrong foot on the wrong pedal. So there needs to be a barrier of some description there. And whilst I agree with the greenery, I'm ever so pleased that the greenery is there. But could we have a couple of trees put in, please? As this would, because the reason that I say this is that trees are very good for grabbing carbon. And if people have got cars, there's going to be carbon coming out. And we need to show that we are in a carbon neutral zone. So I think trees would be admirable, say 2 or 3 trees perhaps across the back, which would look quite attractive, if that's possible, please.
Sorry.
Yep.
Thank you. So I think what we could do is probably put a condition on asking for an amended landscaping scheme. So at the moment there is a condition that the development has to be carried out with the landscaping provision submitted, but what we can do is put a separate one on and request additional details, and we could specify that it needed to include some sort of low barrier or fencing. I think perhaps I would be more favourable to a wooden fence or barrier as opposed to a metal one, because I think that would look a bit unattractive with the soft landscaping, but it would still have the impact of I hope that it would stop somebody driving forward, but we can put a condition on requiring additional landscaping.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider a piece of wood to stop a car, would
but
you? But hey, if that is the case, then that is the case. But I think we need to put a bit of a safety feature in there because of such happenings could happen, and I wouldn't want to see anybody end up in somebody's front room.
Well,
Thank
you don't know that, do you? But we could ask, as Casey said, they could go back and ask for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other members wishing to speak? Oh, Councillor Cripps, Councillor Constable, take your turn, whichever.
Just a quickie.
Oh, right.
Glad to see parking being added in, as opposed to our normal routine on new developments of not meeting the parking requirements. So it's a positive for me.
Thank you very much. Councillor Constable.
Hi, I know the development, is it on now?
Yeah,
yeah.
it is,
The
thank you.
development is for over a certain age group, and at the moment, a lot of the residents are probably infirm and maybe not driving and having carers. But as those residents pass on, and younger people come in, and they will probably have cars, there's no residents parking there, and I think that's probably a greater concern than visitors parking.
Okay, Katie, please.
Thank you. So I think the point of it, the purpose of these bungalows is to serve a certain group of people. And although at present, though, that group of people that are in the bungalows do not have cars, it isn't part of this application that we are considering the residents parking. So the bungalows already exist, and that has been approved back in the 20th century with no parking. And as I discussed, there are kind of informal arrangements with the church and other public car parks for the residents to be able to buy permits and to park their cars that way. So I appreciate what you're saying about the residents parking, but it isn't part and parcel of this application. What we've got to consider is what's in front of us, and that is visitor parking. And until there was kind of evidence in front of us that there is a strain and that application is brought forward, that would be the time for that to be considered. At the moment, we've got to consider visitor parking, and it would improve a situation on the site. As I've shown in the photographs, there is kind of a highway safety issue where cars are parked miscellaneously on the road and causing issues. So although it wouldn't necessarily tackle all issues to do with parking, it would be an improvement over what's existing at the moment.
Right, thank you. Right, I'm going to bring this to an end in a minute because I think we've discussed this. Councillor Williams. Because we're only deciding about the visiting car parks, not about the... That's what this is, the application is, the car parking spaces.
I appreciate that. I presume that none of these homes have a driveway next to them.
No.
And so therefore they wouldn't be able to use electric car charging, so perhaps we could ask that a couple of them have electric car charging points.
Would you want a condition? It's only for visitors, and they've only got a very short time, haven't they, Katie?
Yeah, we don't currently have local policy or national guidance which really drives EV charging points for this scale of development. And where there is for visitors, and they will only be there a short time, it would primarily be for people kind of visit their friends and family, and also care workers, deliveries, things like that. I'm not sure that there would be long enough to charge the vehicles, but there are also public car parks nearby that there are EV charging points provided. Hopefully that answers it.
Okay,
Right,
thank you.
Hold on, I've got Councillor Milne, and then who else was over this side? Councillor Foster, and then the last question is going to be Councillor Lawman, because this is all we're discussing is the visitors' car parking, not the development as a whole.
Right, well, that's exactly what I'm going to mention. When I was with the trustees and we were looking at this, this provides a kind of grasscrete surface, whereas at the moment it's mud. You know, it can be mud if it's heavy rain. And of course, if we get emergency services vehicles like ambulances coming in, this is a very useful facility. So as it is, it's a sensible thing to do, and I support it. And that's one big advantage of this. And when carers arrive in vehicles, or you get minibuses coming to pick up residents and so on, it's absolutely ideal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor, I was going to say Councillor Butcher, but you've got the wrong
I'm
nameplate.
the bloke.
Yeah, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. Just quickly, as a possibility for Councillor Stanley's concern, a raised curb, and may I move for approval?
Thank you. Have we got a seconder for the motion? Oh, we've got loads of them. Take your pick, whichever you would like to do. Right. So we've got members who've got a motion on the table for approval, seconded by, who are you taking?
Councillor Lawman.
Councillor Lawman. Members, can I have a vote, show of hands? What things? We didn't have any motion. Oh, the only condition, no, the only condition we've had, not a motion, it's a condition that Katie's going to go back and see about a barrier
Landscape, yeah.
and soft landscaping.
We'll condition a landscaping plan.
Yeah, the landscape. Members. I am now. Members, can I have a show of hands for approval, please? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. I'm going to close the meeting at, by my watch, it's 10 to 9. I haven't got anything like any other minutes because I've just got two little hands. Thank you, members, for a very good meeting. See you at the next one. Well, I might not. It might not be me.